Hi, hello. This is Zach Lyman, and you're listening to the Zach Lyman podcast or watching it. Thank you so much for watching it on Spotify or the YouTube channel. I appreciate you. And thank you for coming back. And thank you, if you're new, for checking out the show. This week, I have a wonderful guest, a great human being, Patrick Bean. He's a talented comedian living in Arizona, and we talk a lot about comedy, and we talk about his Amazon Prime special, Zen Comedy, that he is in, and also just chat about what that's like preparing for something at that level. And then also we talk about comedy festivals and applying or not applying and sending a tape. I mean, it's a real good conversation. If you enjoy stand-up comedy, this is the great episode to tune into. Real quick before we get into the episode, I've been on the road this weekend. If you're watching this the day it comes out, this weekend I'm in Eugene, Oregon, but I have plenty of other dates on my website, ZachLymanPodcast.com. Check out my tour dates. Come see me do stand-up comedy. I'd really appreciate that. And then May 22nd is the big day. Is the big day that I'm filming my comedy special in Arizona. So please get the tickets. Tickets are available. Check it out. And now let's just get into the episode with my friend Patrick Bean. And Denver's like that, where Denver has so many like brewery shows where it's
Yeah.
like, you could probably do 3 brewery shows in a night and it's not crazy because they're like, they're right next to each other. So
Yeah. Well, and that's like we've talked about the DIY style comedy for, we've gone back and forth and just yeah, I think that's a really good avenue is yeah, you can do like the 3 or 4 different brewery shows or like, oh, well the comedy club's already booked for that night. So, 10, 15 miles away, there's this brewery with a stage and a good sound system and some lighting. We can just go set up a show there and you're not necessarily directly competing, but
yeah.
it's just another show that can be done.
Yeah, and nowadays it's like, with DIY where it's like you could have the show and then that show could be like also you know, an Amazon special at the same time, right? Like it could be
Hmm.
like a brewery show that turns into an Amazon special and you're in Phoenix and you're not even in like New York or LA or all those type of things. And then also you could release it on YouTube for free. It's like these
Hmm.
like the avenue of just like starting with like something localized to growing. It really makes me question like like why move to the big expensive cities when you could like
Hmm.
build something great in like another city. But I think there is still like a good takeaway of like living in New York. I learned where it's like just being around so much of other people that are like taking it professionally, like they're like
Hmm.
professional comedians,
Yeah.
trying to be very serious about it is a different vibe than some scenes where it's like more hobbyist or hobby filled and or maybe people that are like maybe they're like it's just a fun hang. It's like they're kind of in the scene
Yeah.
in general and it's just a fun hang, which is there's nothing wrong with that. If you asked me 10 years ago I would have said there's something wrong with that, but I think now that
Hmm.
I realize that people can have grown up hobbies, like they can be a grown up and have hobbies, and
Oh,
I don't need
absolutely.
I don't need to be mad that they're in my art or whatever I'm trying to do when I'm 19. Like,
Yeah. No, oh, I used to be the same way. If you, same thing, if you asked me maybe 2 years ago, and there was another local comic who we had like a same conversation where I was like, I'm tired of these people going up at open mics when I'm trying to work on my new joke and they just need a new profile picture for Tinder where they're standing on a stage with a microphone with the lights on. Like that used to irk me too. And now I'm like, no, it's, a hobby. Like, I forget, I heard on like another podcast that someone was saying, if someone's goal is to just be the local headliner, they
yeah.
don't want to tour the country or the world, they don't want to put out albums or specials, or they just want to go out on a Friday, Saturday night, their friends producing a show, they have an act, they want to do it, have some laughs, maybe throw a little money in their pocket, but like just go out and be the rock star for the night. Zero wrong with that. I agree.
Yeah.
Um,
I think
there's
that's like
my old.
that's the more grown up way to kind of think about that stuff. I feel like is the
Yeah.
growth of that of like yeah, people can do this for fun. It's like guitar, right? It's
Hmm.
like I can play a little bit of guitar, but like I'm not trying to be in a band, I'm not trying to go on
Hmm.
tour, like, and that's okay, and comedy can be
Yeah.
the same way.
Yeah. The only thing I will say that still annoys me is when people underestimate how hard it is to do comedy,
Well,
or
I
they
mean,
think they can just go up and joke. Right. No, it's the one thing that dovetails where people go up and they're just like, my friends tell me I'm funny. And it's like, that's a good start, but you need the structure. You need this. You can't just go up and tell us your inside jokes. Or like I've seen it plenty of times at an open mic where people will go up, get hammered, and they're full of liquid courage, and now they're like, yup, we're doing it, and just everyone's like, nope, this isn't the vibe, this isn't what we're
yeah,
doing.
but that's one of my favorite parts about stand-up comedy is that they fail, like, any comic can just fail in front of an audience, and then the audience is just like, no, we don't like this, and it's like
Yeah.
across the board, right? So it's like these people that are doing it for a profile picture, or like they got
Hmm.
they lost a bet or whatever, all
Hmm.
those things, and then you're just seeing them sweat as they're like, my friends thought this was great, and you're like, well, it's terrible. It's the
Yep.
worst.
Yeah, you're doing it wrong. If it's a story of you had to be there, rewrite it or don't share it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man, there was one night I was at an open mic, and there was a guy. He was sitting in the front row and just, tipping back beers, just kind of not saying anything, not actively heckling, but just kind of mean mugging a little bit, just like
Hmm.
not being phased, not laughing at anybody. Maybe he'd crack a smirk here and there. And, the manager kind of came over and was like, "Hey, is like everything okay? You seem like, maybe you're not having the best time." He's like, "Oh, I'm just, I'm waiting for people to be funny." Like I overheard this
Yeah.
conversation. And we're like, "Oh, okay." And like other comics had heard, and turns out he had signed up and he was on the list, and this was going to be his big debut.
Hmm.
And he goes up and he just has that confidence, like he's going to just drop some knowledge on us and be God's gift to comedy.
Yeah.
And he he's way too drunk, so like he's stumbling over his words. And he tried to do some premise of like, there's three types of women on dating apps.
Solid.
And
Good
yeah,
start.
right. And it goes in the direction you think it's gonna go. I don't have to expand. But the kicker was, at this point, it's pretty much like 90% comics in the audience at this point. And so he says there's three types, but then he goes, but there's also a fourth type. And we're like, okay, he could have just said there's four. And then he goes, now there's another type, and now all the comics have their hands in the air, like, we're up to five, guys, we're up to five. And then turns out we went up to nine, and he tried. This premise was there's three different types. Nope, apparently there's nine. And it really was like the brother and sisterhood of comedy in that moment, where we all went, nobody's that guy. Like we were all suffering together, and
Yeah.
we all experienced it. And like, man, that guy just thought he was the best and kind of mean mugged us, but karma bit him right back.
Yeah. Yeah. And some of those guys, some of those, uh, sometimes they'll sign up for the open mics, they'll do that, and then they end up taking a class, or they stick around, and then
Mm-hmm.
it could be, down the future it works out for them, but it
Oh
is
yeah.
like such a wake up when you first start, where you're like, oh wow, this is insanely hard, and our jobs as comedians is to make it look like it's the easiest thing we've ever done. And it's like,
Yeah.
what a weird. I also just think comedy, I've been thinking a lot about how comedy is just so weird, like such a, like, I feel like it's like an 1800s thing, right? Where it's just like,
Mm-hmm.
who else gets paid to travel the country and be silly and be like, these are my thoughts. And like, that's
Mm-hmm.
it. That's the whole thing, is that I'm going to city being like, and these are things that I wanted to talk about for 40 minutes. And then people give us money. And it's like,
Yeah.
what an old, like, very vaudeville. Like,
Yeah. I mean, that's where we come from. Like Abbott and Costello used to just, they'd, do Atlantic City on one weekend and New York on another, and stop all through New Jersey on the way up.
yeah.
Like, little things like that. And Mark Twain used to go around and give his lectures, his little humorous, basically just read
Yeah.
his essays out loud, kind of like he'd memorize them,
Yeah, it's just
if I
crazy
remember
that we're
correctly.
like still doing that and people are like still interested. And actually, right now, it's like kind of the biggest it's been in like a very long
It
time, which
is.
is it's like such an old school thing that we're like, we love it. We love when we just rant for 40 minutes about something. Like,
Yeah. Well, the best is because, in theory, so this is my theory, I'll say. In theory, anyone can do it. My theory, personally, and I'm curious what you have, I think if anyone puts in the time, if they go to a class, if they feel like they need that little
yeah.
guidance and push in the right direction, whatever, I think anyone who wants to on planet Earth can do a really good 5 minute set.
Mm,
And then the drop off, whether it's commitment, how serious someone takes it, or at a certain point there is the like, do they have the talent or not, can they hold an audience's attention for this long? But I feel like as you go up to like 10 minutes, you have a wave of people drop off. You go to 15 minutes, another wave of people drop off. And then once you hit like 20 minutes, now you're almost halfway to a headliner set.
yeah.
So like, I think if you hit 20, you just kind of keep building and building. But I think anyone can do 5 minutes if they really put in the time and the effort.
Yeah, I think that's true. I really lean towards the idea that anyone could be a good comedian. It just might
Hmm.
be a 20-year plan or a 30-year plan. I think that's really all it is that some people get it a lot quicker than others. And I feel like, I often use me as an example of like I was so bad when I was a child because it's like I'm a child. What am I going to talk about?
Right,
And
right.
but then it's like just as life goes on and I just got better at comedy. But it's just like every year I'm learning. Every year I'm like
Hmm.
trying to get a little bit better. And I think it's like those two things where it's like time and then like willingness to try to get better, even if it's a small amount. So I think anyone could do
Yeah.
it. Like if anyone was like absolutely terrible and they spent 20 years of just trying to get better, they could be a pretty solid comedian, I feel like. I think a lot of
Yeah.
times it's people just stop. It's like because again, it feels like we talked about in the beginning, where it's like it feels so lost. It can feel like you have to set your own goals. You have to kind of come up with what you want to do. And a lot of people just are like, it's just not working out, or they just stop growing. Where a lot of comics where they get to that 10-minute set that they feel good about and they ride that for a long time and they don't
Hmm.
try to get to that next level. But yeah, I really like, when I go to open mics and stuff like that, I try not to judge anyone that's like too new because it's
No.
like, yeah, like even if they're like a year, 2 years in, I'm like, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, like I
Oh,
can
yeah, yeah,
immediately
yeah.
think of how terrible my jokes were 2 years in, like so
Right.
that's fine. And people, you could get if some comics don't feel that way, they're very like mad at this spot that person's getting booked and they're terrible. And I'm like, just let them figure it out. Like let
Yeah.
them be on this ride for a while. Like,
Hmm. Yeah. I think a lot of comics, and before the internet hates me, I also like, as long as somebody's like putting in the work and the time, I respect anyone who gets on stage and at least tries.
yeah.
But like if you're going up and if it's not working and you refuse to believe it's not working, that's when I'm like, that's a little uncomfortable. Now, you got to be a little more present for those people. But yeah, I if someone's trying, even if they're bombing, if they're you could tell they're like going home and they're really working hard on it and thinking about it. That's really all you can ask of somebody. And then they're doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like we all were terrible and we're all
Hmm.
just trying to get better. But man, it is a journey.
It
Like
really is.
I am like I'm scared to realize how long I've been doing stand up. I it's just like my stand up could drive now, like that's where I'm at. Like
Yeah. Yeah, that's one way to look at it. I see that's the thing. I don't know if I should like I don't really count that like you didn't take a big break. I took a big break because I think
mhm,
because I started at the same time, like 18, and so now I just turned 37. So it's like, yeah, mine can also drive, right? Yeah, mine could drive. It's 2 years shy of, having a beer if I didn't take that gap.
right,
So with the
yeah.
gap, it's only 10. It's only double
Yeah.
digits. So, but I think about that. We're like, wow, it'd be 18 if I didn't stop.
Yeah, it's just weird to like do anything for a long time, you know? And then it's like I keep having these thoughts of like as I get ready to record this hour, I'm just like I'm
Hmm.
constantly thinking about how strange all of this is and how
Hmm.
strange that I'm doing any of this. Like like
Right.
I've like dedicated my life to doing a thing that like I'm now recording an hour and then at the same time I'm telling family members like no, this is like a big thing. Like you know
Hmm.
like they're like, "Oh, is it cool, like what's an hour mean?" Like and it's like
Yeah.
you know it's
It's not
but
everyone does this.
yeah, nah, it's so weird to be doing that. But yeah, I guess like I do want to know like where like where you want to do like what do you want to do with your comedy career, because there's so many choices, right? There's so many things that you could do, and it's like comics do have to kind of pick like, hey, I'm looking to do these things,
Right.
uh and yeah, like where do you feel like you're heading now that you've been working hard at it for the last few years, so
Yeah, I my goal is, I want to get to a place where doing stand up, traveling, doing little clubs, small theaters, wherever I can, get the time and get the venue. And just start making a living between that. And then I introduce you to my friend George, who's a
mhm.
magician. We have a podcast that's going to be coming out hopefully in a couple months after we record this right now. So that should be, like summer of 2025. Been working on it for a while. If people are familiar with me and George, we've been working on this for far too long to not have anything to show for it. But we're rounding that corner now. We're getting there. So so that'll be coming out. So, I'd love it if it was, between like the podcast, obviously if that can get like some kind of sponsorship. But even if it was just stand up, like I know we've talked about it before where if I could like name a comedian whose career I would like to emulate,
Mhm.
I would love for it to be something like Brian Regan, where tours theaters, he has his following, but he can still walk down the street and he's not getting mobbed like the Beatles in the 60s. You know,
Yeah.
like, Eddie Murphy had, I don't think Eddie Murphy could go outside and, just treat himself to lunch in public for a number of years just because he was
Yeah.
Eddie Murphy after Delirious, right? Although you, not to give away your answer, I know you brought up Kyle Kinane, and I'm like, yeah, that makes sense too. Like smaller theaters,
Yeah.
comparatively. But yeah, just pay the bills with comedy. That's the goal.
Yeah, yeah, I'm really like, yeah, I'm that's where I'm aiming for that Kyle Kinane life where I can just put a group of 200 people together in any city and just sell that in any city,
Yeah.
and not have to worry about a single ticket being sold or not. I so
Mhm.
I think because like I saw he was like in Portland and he just kept adding shows. He was like I think he was doing like the Helium or whatever, and he was like
Mhm.
adding another show, and all of a sudden it's like Thursday to Monday or something crazy. It's
Oh
like a crazy,
wow.
it was like a crazy run of he just kept adding, and I was like, that's nuts. But like, I'm sure I just remember years ago where he bought like a van and was just truly messaging like comics and groups and stuff and being like, hey, who can help me put together a show in Flagstaff? And then
Mhm.
like they put together a show in Flagstaff and like last notice sold 200 tickets or whatever it was, just like
Oh, that's amazing.
without, it's just like that easy. And I'm like, I want it to be that easy because at this point,
Yeah.
like I'm not I'm definitely still driving to venues stressed about ticket sales. Like
Right, right.
like and
Yeah.
I don't know if that'll ever if that because I'm an anxious person, I don't know if that'll ever
Mhm.
go away. But I think there's a point that it gets easier. But yeah, man, Brian Regan's a good one because you're right. Like he's like secretly one of the biggest comedians ever. I feel like
Mhm.
where he's like secretly doing very big venues, but he's not like in our faces every single day.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's not like, the face of the new sitcom on NBC, which, I'm sure there's great money in that, but he can walk down the street, have a bite to eat, hang out, maybe a few people recognize him and talk to him. But then yeah, he goes out and performs in these gorgeous like 1200 seat theaters, does a
Yeah.
couple shows in the weekend. I think he has a tour bus now. I don't even know if I'd want to go that big, where like you have a tour bus,
Uh-huh.
but he pops in, does one or two shows in that city, gets up to the next city, another one or two shows, then flies home for the rest of the week. Like, oh, it's glorious.
I will say a tour bus does sound nice because you can nap. You can sleep, and some of those drives are horrifying. And then you gotta that's like the thing that I struggle with, as I get older, where it's like the drive, and then also like if you drive that day and you have to perform that day,
Hmm.
um like just having the energy to do two things, like,
Yeah. Well,
a tour
well,
bus, I could sleep, I could rest up.
that's very true. That's very true. Because I mean, you and I are. I know we're both very big coffee people, so that's usually, even if it's a 9 o'clock show, I'm like, all right, we're gonna have coffee now. Like, I'll be the guy cracking open an energy drink for a 9 o'clock show, and then I can't sleep that night. But the
Yeah.
9 o'clock show was great, and I brought my energy. So,
Yeah, I mean, I drank cold brew before this, so
oh,
I was
same. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I just chugged a whole glass of it and was like, I need it for the as
just
soon
to
as
keep
it's
going.
like 2 in the afternoon, I'm like, yeah, if I gotta do anything, I need some extra
Oh yeah,
fake
you need that
energy.
afternoon, just that afternoon boost, just to push you through. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then are you working like in that it's like recording specials or
Hmm.
making, or is it just focusing on in-person shows and podcasting that like really seems to be like what you're like excited about right now?
No, there's definitely making specials. I will say I was gonna tell you off air, but I'll tell you now. I'll tell you now, right now. No, it's
Okay.
weird. It's a weird announcement. I'm just gonna keep saying the word now. No, I reached out to our mutual friend Josh, and I
Okay.
was like, hey man, what would be the quote on filming like three camera, hour long set, and then also maybe taking that audio to do like an audio only release for like a Spotify or a Bandcamp or something like that. So I'm waiting on him to get back to me on that, but I'm thinking maybe the next 12 to 18 months trying to do something like that.
Really?
And yeah, I think so.
That's
I have the
exciting.
material. It's just a matter of tightening it up, right? Thank you. Yeah. So I gave myself like the 18-month window of like this way I have all new material for it because I don't really want to reuse anything from like Zen Comedy. Maybe
Okay.
like, one bit maybe just because it can work and I have like tags for it in some of the
Mm-hmm.
other stuff I'm working on that isn't in Zen Comedy. But yeah, I want to amass that much because one, it's a target, it's a goal to hit, but then also it'll force me to start at least writing whatever is going to be the next set of material. Because when I was a kid, when I first started in Jersey, part of why I burned myself out is I was that guy, kind of like what you were saying, where I did the same 10 minutes and I got pretty good at that 10 minutes, but I wasn't growing outside of that 10 minutes. And just, I'd do like two shows a month and I would do those 10 minutes and okay, it worked. But like, especially for repeat customers at that venue, they're like, yeah, we like you, but we've seen that before.
Yeah.
Like there's no more surprise. So this will really help the trajectory of the habit of like, keep writing, write more material than you think you're ever going to need, and just don't stop writing then. So, I think that'll force me to like build that habit up more than I already have it.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, it's like, I think that's a perfect kind of way to look at it, like 12 to 18 months, because like, if it happens, anything, if you're anything like me, I
Mhm.
write a joke and then I write a different joke and that one's better than this other joke. And then, and then I'm like, I never am like planning the hour perfectly because I'm
Mhm.
replacing it with something new. And then I'm
Right.
always like, oh man, this half of this hour is like way better than the other half of the hour.
Hmm.
And that can be a stressful, that's like an issue that I get into. And having that leeway of like, yeah, I could, I after 12 months, I could just keep growing to get to this certain point and kind of move the date or move whatever, I have scheduled for. I think that's
Hmm.
great, man. That's exciting that like you're planting that seed and that
Hmm.
you're like starting that today. And
Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, Josh is for anyone listening, Josh is the guy that did the Big Laugh, Zen Comedy. He did the
Hmm.
thing in that's about to come out that we filmed in Loveland. Like and he's also going to
Yes.
be filming my special. Like he's the dude.
Yes.
Like he is the best
He is. He's
and
great.
he films specials. That's his job. Like,
He is. He's the go-to guy. I mean, even when some of the touring comedians come into town for like the big clubs out here in Phoenix, if they call ahead and they're like, "Yeah, I want to get a videographer," the club calls Josh and goes, "Hey, Jeff Ross wants you to film him this weekend. Can you, or in a month, or
yeah,
So he is the guy, and yeah, I mean, I like. I mean, obviously, I was a part of Zen Comedy. I was in the audience for the Big Laugh. Like, the setup is so good. Josh makes it like the cameras aren't even there. I mean, with
yeah,
Zen, you definitely saw the lights. It was a more intimate venue. But like the Big Laugh, unless you tripped over a tripod because you weren't watching where you were going, you didn't know that it was being filmed. You just felt like you're in a comedy show,
yeah.
which is what you want. I mean, you want the excitement of, hey, we're filming something, but you want everyone in the audience to like relax and have a good time.
Yeah, to yeah, and it's like in having Josh where he gets there and he like sets it all up way ahead of time, and he
Mm-hmm.
like has everything set. It makes it does they see it when they come in, and then they forget about it and they kind of get
Yeah.
relaxed. Yeah, that's great. And also, I totally forgot that you were in the audience of the Big Laugh. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's funny. Yeah, you're in
Yeah.
that as an audience, and then you're like, I think like I don't know, a year later, like Zen.
Yeah, it was about a year
Something.
later.
Yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
funny.
Yeah. I joke
Uh,
with people that actually I'm in the Big Laugh in the center camera shot when it's like panned all the way out. My bald head is bottom center if you're looking at the audience. So technically I'm in the Big Laugh. I don't say anything. I don't earn a laugh. You just see the back of my head laughing.
the only in the Big Laugh, the only person that I can like truly hear, and it's also because I have been around this person for way too many hours, is I know Lou Moon's laugh, and I can hear
Yeah.
in it's always like in my set, if I said something unplanned where he is like that's a weird tag, he'll laugh. And so you can
Yeah.
hear there's a couple times that I hear Lou when I like when I was editing it and stuff that
Mhm.
I could hear it. But that's so funny. And then yeah, I'd love to talk about your experience with Zen comedy and
Yeah.
how did you I guess how did you prepare for filming something like that as a comic and yeah, just like leading up to it or your thoughts beforehand?
I mean, I was excited. I was excited when you reached out to me to be like, "Hey, I'm planning this next project. Would you want to be a part of it?" And I was like, "Absolutely," because again, I had seen The Big Laugh, and I think The Big Laugh had just come out when you started like getting the lineup for, if I remember the timeline right. So, because I
Probably.
think,
I was very it's all a blur to me to be honest, but
mhm,
I do I do remember being so excited about the Big Laugh that I was like ready to plan 12 more. Like I was so ready,
right,
like let's just do it every weekend, like I was
yeah,
very like so excited about it. But yeah, I think it was like
yeah.
yeah, like it just came out and I started secretly kind of making plans for the next one.
Yeah, getting the next lineup. And yeah, and then, you started the group thread with everyone who was on the show, and that got me even more excited where I'm like, oh, these are good comics. I'm excited. And yeah, and just so for prepping it, it was, like, okay, what's my best like 15 minutes? What are my strongest jokes? What have I been opening with? What am I closing with? And just kind of building that up. And then what was really good was it really got me in the habit to go, okay, are these bits as tight as they possibly can be?
Yeah.
And it started from when you said, okay, this is, you're doing like a 15-minute set. So from that message until even the night before, I was still going, all right, what's that tag? There's got to be a tag there. There's too much time. There's something, or like, oh, this reference wasn't, it hasn't been hitting. I need a different board game reference for the one bit where I talk about board games. I'm like, I need a different one. And, like staying up till 3 a.m. the night before going, what do I, yeah, that one. Okay, let's do that one. And I think I was texting another comic to be like, hey, does this fit that bit? Like another guy who knows my act really well. And I was like, hey, does this work? He goes, yeah, that should work. And I'm like, all right, cool. So there's one like on Zen when I make the joke about the board game Clue. That was a real roll of the dice. No pun
Yeah.
intended. but no pun intended at the same time, because I hadn't actually tried that line in front of an audience yet.
Mm.
And like that bit, for anyone who's seen Zen Comedy, like it's the board games and everything kind of builds and builds, and like that's like probably one of the tighter jokes I have where it just keeps going and going and building. So had that line not worked, it could have thrown off the momentum. So I remember I was very internally clenched, like, oh boy, I hope this one works. And then it did. So uh but yeah, the prep was just like, all right, what do I want to be the representation of me?
Yeah.
Because it's not just my special, it's, me, you, Lou, Lola, and Carrie. So we all are bringing our A game. So like, I need to make sure I'm keeping up, and no one's, I, I didn't play a lot of team sports,
Yeah.
but like, you almost think of it like team sports where you're like, all right, well, I don't want to be the dead weight. I want to make sure I meet the standard that everyone else is meeting. So that was probably, I think, my biggest internal challenge is like, all right, make sure I show that I can hang.
Yeah. When you're so okay, so my question, when you are preparing to record something for knowing that it's going to be on like a streaming service, and planning that set, like did you run it a bunch of times beforehand, or were you kind of like, I know this well enough to kind of just go with it, or what was that like leading up to it?
Yeah, I ran it a lot because I didn't have at the time. I wouldn't say I had a lot more material. So once I figured out whatever, like the 10 minutes maybe that I wasn't gonna do on that
Yeah.
special, every set I was doing from then on, whether it was a show or even an open mic, was just, it's gonna be something that's arranged in this 15 minutes, and just like going over it over and over and over again, and then working even on the bits like, does this topic transition smoothly into this topic? And just like laying it out visual, like I put it all on a whiteboard and just
Oh,
visually
nice.
had like, okay, here's the first 5 minutes, here's the second chunk of 5 minutes, here's the third chunk of 5 minutes. And there were plenty of swaps, and does this fit here, does this fit here? But yeah, it was a lot of just doing the same 15 minutes over and over, whether it was in 5 minute increments in different sets, or if I was booked on a show and I was doing 10 or I was doing 15, then I would do that set, or whatever chunk of that set I could fit in, and just try to hammer it down as much as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. That's I'm always curious about that, of like what leads up, because like again, it goes back to our job is to make it seem effortless and make it seem like
Mm-hmm.
this is just a normal night. And then something with Zen Comedy where it's filmed in like, I always just it's it's a Reiki Academy, but I always just say
Mm-hmm.
picture a yoga studio. You're there, you got it.
Same vibe.
And so like not only is it like a chill vibe, so then it's like, chill comics and this vibe. So I'm always curious of like what it's like. Yeah, I ran it 1,000 times. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and that's like
Have
I feel,
you
yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna ask, have you met any comic, not even just not even specifically on Zen, but like in general, any comic who's filmed something who is just like, yeah, I don't know, I had a loose idea and just kind of walked on stage, whatever happened, happened. Because that to me is like the gutsiest thing a comic could do.
Yeah,
Like, I don't know, you
actually,
might tell me that's your approach.
no, it's definitely not. I am stressed the whole time.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
were
same.
there.
Okay. Yes. You had a very good poker face, I will say then. You didn't seem overly stressed. Like, I could tell you were occupied with making sure everything was good and working with Josh and making sure the camera angles were what you wanted, and the lighting you agreed with him on and were good with. I mean, like we talked about before, Josh knows what he's doing. But,
Yeah.
you being the producer, you wanted final say of like, oh, let's move this camera 6 inches this way instead. Little things like
Yeah.
that were maybe on your mind.
Which I
But
do to keep Josh on his toes, and I do that to show my authority. Is like, these
yes.
camera angles are good, but now I'm gonna move everything 3 inches because
Yeah.
yeah, Josh, you gotta remember, I'm the
Yeah.
producer. That's
Yeah, I'm the big cheese
yeah,
here, sir.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Hmm.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
But
I
no, you
definitely was very preoccupied and was very like I've told you this before, where it's like set up this light, set up this camera. Okay, Zach, now you're on stage, and I was like, oh boy, like I was not ready for that transition at all.
right.
But yeah, thank you for saying I had a good poker face, because the internal me was like just really screaming the whole time, like freaking out.
Mhm.
But like on the outside, I was trying to be like, no, everything's chill. Yeah, you guys hanging, you guys having a good time, like
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, well, and that was good too, because like, you were kind of like the leader of the night. Like this is your project, so everyone's kind of looking to you. And little inside baseball for the live taping, you also had me act as host.
yeah,
So I was going up in between and bringing up the next comic. So I was sort of, I feel like, kind of the point of contact of like, oh, if there's an issue, if like a comic had a question, it would kind of be my job to come pull you to the side and be like, hey, so and so's wondering about this. Like, is this
yeah,
okay? Or what do we think about this? And like, you were cool, cool as a cucumber, as they say. Like, you were showing like, yep, this is good, everything's under control, and it was. We had a great time.
yeah.
I can't think of anything, any little like fun movie trivia type things of like, well, actually, this happened in this shot, and like everything
Mm,
was smooth that night.
yeah. I mean, we had to add lights. That was like the hang up. Um,
Oh yeah.
I did like a test run with my cameras the night before, like set up some lights,
Hmm.
stood in, kind of figured things out. And then Josh came with his cameras, and mine's Canon and his are Sony. And
Mm.
that alone just was like how they perceived light was just so
Wow.
different. And
Hmm.
it was kind of like honestly strange, like how different it was. So we really kind of had to like play with some stuff and move things to get the look that Josh and I are trying to get with it. But yeah, again, another shout out to Josh, where he's just like such a pro, and he visually knows what I like. And so he was
Hmm.
already like, Zach likes this, let me do, like he
Yeah.
was like, this is gonna help in this, so we like did some stuff. But and you were so helpful
Oh,
in
thank you.
general, because you stood in and you like let us kind of mess with the lights while you were on stage, and you let us kind of like before the show even really started. And then yeah, you hosting it was like, I knew that you would do a killer job hosting.
Thank
So I
you.
was like, Patrick's a champ. He for sure will. I won't have to worry, because it's like try
Right.
to delegate as much as you can, especially on like a project where it's like everything's coming out of, I'm paying out of pocket for all this as a passion
Hmm.
project to hopefully, hopefully it gets picked up and hopefully works out. So it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, yeah. Honestly, I loved doing Zen Comedy, and I thought like you guys were also great. And I will say that I think uh Lou Moon probably decided his set during that week, to go back to your question
Oh, really?
of does anyone show up. I think Lou uh and since I'm good friends with him, I feel safe saying this, is I think he
Hmm.
decided it right before he went on stage. I think he was like, yeah, what do I want to say? and then and then went out. Maybe I'm completely wrong, and maybe he also was doing a good
Maybe.
poker face, but I feel like I was in the green room with him, and he was like, "Yeah, maybe this joke, yeah, yeah, yeah." And then he did like some bits that were like new that I have never seen,
Hmm.
and I love Lou's set. He was so funny, but
Oh
it
yeah.
was it was kind of funny to be like, this dude's just he's just winging it, man. He's just going in.
Just going up, having a good time. Yeah.
I'll have to ask Lou if that's true, but I really think behind the scenes that's what I perceived.
You might not be wrong because he was. I mean, yeah, he was also. I mean, no one was really like nervous that night, from what I remember. We were all like excited.
Yeah.
But I mean, I felt nervous because I'm like, all right, we're taping it and we're gonna, hopefully put it, hopefully see where it gets picked up, see what streaming service wants it.
Yeah.
So I was definitely nervous because it was like the first big thing that I had done. So I was like, all right, I can't bomb. I better not bomb. If I bomb, I'm gonna hate myself. This is not gonna be good. But I mean, the crowd was good, the setup was good. We, everything was, it was great. So.
Yeah, it was um yeah, so the reason we picked that place is because I was doing monthly shows there, and I
Mhm.
always thought the shows were really fun, and they were the most loose, and I would host the shows, and I would
Mhm.
truly use it as a writing project every month where I'm like, all right, I got to write some stuff and let me try it out at Zen Comedy and it's going to be safe. And then, of course, like if we got friends passing through town, I was like having them headline or whatever.
Hmm.
And so I loved doing it there. And I was so happy that I could kind of like put that in a capsule is really what I wanted to
Yeah.
do with it. Where it's like, this is a moment in my life where I was doing these shows, and here are some of the funny Phoenix comedians that I loved being around and what they were doing at that
Mhm.
time. And so I'm so happy that it's like on, uh, it's on Amazon, and we have like an ongoing. You've mentioned it. We have an ongoing group chat, and I just love throwing because it's been a while now, but like 3 months,
Yeah.
6 months later, and I'll just be like, hey, here's a little thing that's happening, or here's something
Yeah.
I noticed, or here, like recently, we just started getting a lot of views on the UK, and I was like, I don't know
Okay.
why, but it's in the UK, and I think it's free with streaming in the UK, so it's
Oh,
like,
okay.
yeah, it's like, I don't know what that's about, but that's what's happening, like.
That's fine. I listen, if the UK wants to fly us out there for shows, I say we go. But
Yeah, yeah, we could do a reunion tour for sure.
yeah, why not? It was so fun. But no, and to your point too, what you were talking about, which thank you for all the nice things you said. I know I just noticed I didn't want to cut you off. Um the
Welcome.
uh oh god, what I liked about the venue too is you're so used, and we've talked about this without microphones, but every special you see is in this like giant 1,200 seat theater, or comics are doing arenas now.
Yeah,
And so you're practically filming them like it's a football game somewhat. I can
yeah,
like, in terms of the scope, I can only imagine, right? Like in
yeah,
college, I was a TV film major, so I helped film, I think, like a girls' soccer game, women's soccer game one time.
yeah.
So like I get, and that's only maybe one camera. So like the scope is so different. But I like that it was a more intimate venue and was more what, a local independently produced comedy show feels like, where it's not 800 people jammed into a theater.
Hmm.
I liked that more intimate feel. So I thought that was also a really cool choice on your part.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, I same. It's like I wanted to see. I very openly have talked about where it's like the Big Laugh was a project in a comedy club. What's that
Mhm.
look like? In like we said, cameras kind of hidden, bigger room, like over 100 people in there, crammed
Mhm.
in there, and stage lighting, all that stuff. And then I immediately wanted to be like, okay, what's the opposite of that? Like, what's the smallest version, the most like really skeleton crew and like local vibe that we could kind of, and
Mhm.
I wanted to see that. And then like, it's funny because I have this thing that's about to, Josh helped me film in
Yeah.
Colorado. And I feel like it's almost like, not until I'm saying this now, I feel like it's literally between those two things where it's not a big
Interesting.
comedy club. And then it's also not like the smallest venue, and it's a music venue that's, I think
Mhm.
there's like 60 or 80 seats in general. And they're also just kind of crammed in there with like an open bar nearby. And so it's like, now I've done like those three different sizes. It's like,
Mhm.
I wanted to see what I liked because years ago I thought I was gonna just make 1,000 of these, and I'm
I
quickly
mean, you could in
realizing,
theory.
yeah, I'm just quickly realizing that I like doing it, but I have to wait for like the perfect moment, the perfect venue, the perfect kind of lineup
Yeah.
thing to kind of happen. And I bet you it will again. I bet you in the next couple of
Yeah.
years I'll probably do something else. But yeah, I think Zen comedy, it's just nice to kind of go back and view it that way and know that like my dad was in the audience for that,
Yeah.
and like we
Such a
we
cool
had
guy.
family friends and stuff like that, and like Jacob was there from the Big Laugh. He was in the audience. So you
Oh
guys
yeah, that's
switched seat.
right.
You guys just
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Basically.
so yeah, it's just cool. It's a good capsule, and yeah, you should be super proud of it, and you did a great job, and people should definitely watch it for
Thank
sure.
you.
And it is now free on YouTube. So
It's on YouTube now, so there's really no paywall, which is nice, but
yeah, yeah. It was interesting to be like, because it's been out for like what, a year?
a little more than a year, yeah.
a little more than a year. And so then we just dropped it on YouTube, and it was cool to see the excitement. People were like excited. It's like honestly, it's like a year went by, and in content world, that's like 1,000 years. Like,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Where, yeah, it feels like, oh, it's so old. It's like, no, it came out a year ago. It's really not old in the grand scheme of things.
yeah.
Um,
And so to
but I
see
guess
people
you,
excited is great.
yeah. Oh no, I love it. I love that it's getting this like resurgence, like this like second wave of people checking it out, you know? And I guess, because with streaming services, it's, everyone has their favorites or everyone, it's like, oh, I only have these two. I'm not signing up for that one or that, whatever it is. So, YouTube is accessible by everybody. So that broader net now has been
Hmm.
cast for who it can reach.
Yeah. Yeah, man. And I really do think like YouTube's the future. Like we're seeing more and
Hmm.
more YouTube specials come out. And I just heard that they're changing the TV app
Hmm.
to feel more like a streaming service.
Oh, okay.
And so with that change, and then like how high quality these like YouTube specials are and stuff, it's like I do think there will be a moment where it's like that is a like a YouTube comedian or YouTube special is gonna have like the
Hmm.
same, power or respect or whatever you want to call it around like a Netflix special or something like that. I feel like we're just getting closer to that kind of like all evening out where it's just like
Yeah.
everyone, because people don't care where they watch things, they just want to
No.
watch the thing on the way they have access to.
Yeah, they care about, one, do they think the comic is funny?
Yeah.
That's obviously like paramount for a comedy special. And then I think at that point where you really get competitive is like the quality of the camera, the quality of the audio, the lighting, because if you have this, big budget Netflix special, and then you have someone just with as good as cameras on phones are, if it's just a stationary iPhone in the back of the room, no real like camera cuts or,
Yeah.
there's no real mixing or color correction, like that might turn some people off. So, anyone can, with the right budget, anyone can produce something that looks a very, that not just looks, but is high quality.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially it's like we've mentioned it where it's like you could just call someone like Josh, and
Yeah,
just be
just
like,
hire Josh.
just hire someone like Josh, and then it's like boom. Like at least it's all going to be the correct stuff. And
Hmm.
so it's like you don't need to learn about cameras and editing and things like that. You can at this point, it's like you can pull it off yourself and have something
Hmm.
pretty comparable to a Netflix special at the end of it, as long as it's really up to your hour being good.
Right.
That's
At
really
that point,
it.
it's just all on you. Yeah. The
Yeah.
technology's there. Like you said, no one really cares about what the platform is at this point. I mean, maybe there's some like, there's a diehard Netflix loyalist out there who'll only watch comedians from Netflix, maybe, but
Yeah.
I find that few and far between, I would imagine.
Yeah, because I've even like talked to like bookers and like some are like comedy club owners and stuff, and like the difference
Hmm.
between the day of like when it's like someone did Letterman and now they have like the Letterman credit, or they did
Hmm.
Conan, and like the power that that has, and they can put it on a flyer, and that means something and people come see that comic. Like I've recently heard from some bookers that like that just isn't how things work anymore, where it's like people don't really
Hmm.
care if they did Conan or not. It's more of like, did I see the thing, or was it,
Hmm.
is it something that I'm familiar with? Is more of like the comic, because the comic could do all these late nights and then have a TikTok blow up, and everyone's like, yeah, the TikTok, like so.
Right. Yeah.
It's I think it's like so it's such a weird time to be a comic because it's like these all these like credits that you have in your mind that are like check boxes in your career, and then it's like I don't
Hmm.
know, or a TikTok could blow up, you know.
Yeah. Just the algorithm just has smiled upon me today. And it's seen by 50,000 people in an hour, and then they all share it, and it just explodes, and everybody loves it.
Yeah.
And yeah, now you're like everyone's favorite comic.
Yeah, yeah, and they're like, "We've never seen you on Conan," but it's like,
Right. But now Netflix is calling you because you have this giant new following that's come up out of nowhere.
yeah, yeah, it's so interesting, and some people hate on that, and I totally just thrive in it. I love the idea that like it's just back to us comics that we could just kind of like we don't have to wait for people. to decide
Yeah.
what our
Yeah.
next career thing is. We can just kind of do it and hope for the best.
Right. It really is just like, free market. It really just is like, okay, wherever it lands, it lands. If people like it and they share it and it gets more eyes on it, it builds the traction. If it's not the best, I mean, you're gonna have internet trolls who crap all over it, but it'll just kind of silently go away, and then you can just do whatever the next thing is, and it probably won't like negatively affect you either.
Yeah. Yeah. I, so I do want to ask, like, now that it's been a year since Zen Comedy has come out, do you feel like it changed your career in some way? Like, has it opened doors or changed anything like for you as a comic, having that Amazon Prime credit?
Uh, so it definitely perks up some eyebrows when I'm getting introduced and they say, "Oh, from Zen Comedy on Amazon Prime." Like I have that set on tape, and when the MC says that as he's bringing me up, you can see a couple people in the audience like, "Oh, okay," sit up straight and like, "Oh, let's see what this guy's about," right? Um, so it definitely helps with that, and kind of we were talking about it last time you came to visit and we had dinner, that I probably haven't used it as much as I should. So I need to really be like, guys, I'm on Amazon. Like, it's really nothing to sneeze at. um but I there's imposter syndrome is a real thing, so sometimes I'm like, I'm on Amazon, and I was asked to be on Amazon by someone I respect and who's been doing comedy for all these years. But I'm just like, yeah, I'm on this thing. And it's like, no, be proud, be proud. So I think like I'm getting over the imposter syndrome. So now I'm more willing to be like, yes, I'm on Amazon. This is this is the
Yeah.
special I'm a part of. Um, yeah. So I
Yeah,
think I think that was my hurdle.
yeah, yeah, and yeah, we talked about it. I think it's hard when you're a comic where it's like you don't want to come off bragging or
Yeah.
salesy in any sort of way, and it's hard to like, but like, yeah, man, you've been doing it, a good amount of time. You're a good comic, like you have this credit, like, yeah, but like again, I catch myself all the time where it's like, well, people don't know if they don't know, right? So you gotta like
Right.
say, hey, no, I've actually been doing it a while, and here's a checkbox is really what I feel like with the Amazon
Hmm.
thing, where it's like, hey, and I've been verified as a comedian. Here's the thing that
Yeah.
says that, and
Here's the proof.
yeah, because I just feel like for me, my answer to that of like the big laugh was my first Amazon credit, really like a
Hmm.
noticeable one, and so. Uh, it just kind of like I've told you, I got responses to emails a little bit easier. That's really the
Hmm.
big noticeable of like when I reached out to bookers across the country, instead of just not hearing anything, like at least I would get a reply of like, hey, maybe not now, or a yes here and there, like a little bit more
Hmm.
than before. And I think it's just like, just moving that needle a little bit
Oh
is
yeah.
is like that's all we can kind of hope for with stuff like that. But yeah, man, you should tonight go around telling people that you're on Amazon.
I will. I'm gonna go big at the time of recording. Big Pine Comedy Festival's in town. I'm just gonna go
Oh,
right back
really?
over there. Yeah, I'm just gonna go right over there and just be like, guys, Amazon. And they'll be like, but
Yeah.
you're not on the festival. And I'm like, I didn't apply this year, but that's besides the point.
Yeah, just push down anyone that's on stage and tell them into the microphone. Like,
And just be like, hey guys, you might not have seen this, but I'm on Amazon. I'm now gonna do the 15 minutes for you.
yeah, yeah.
I have all
Here's
this other
my
stuff.
here's my Zen comedy set, and then you just
Yeah,
do
I
it.
have 30 minutes others, 30 other minutes right now, but I'm gonna do this other stuff.
You didn't have so, okay, so Big Pines, yeah, that's a Phoenix
Mhm.
festival. Um okay, I've never got into it. I never made
Mhm.
it into the festival. Have you applied in the past? Have you done it? And like, how do you feel about festivals as a whole, I guess?
I've applied. I have not yet been accepted.
Okay.
But I've seen other comics who they have rejected or just not let into the festival. Rejected sounds like a very strong word. Um, who they haven't put in the festival, and I'm like, okay, I feel like that's in good company. So I'm not like, I don't feel like it's like, oh, I'm a bad comic because I've never been accepted into that festival. This
Yeah.
year particularly, they did like a different turnaround. So normally it's like September, and now they're just doing it in April.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like only 6 months between. And I was like, I don't have like a tape I'm happy with yet. Either like it's the venue, it's too loud, you hear the audience, and I'm like, I'm not gonna try to present that as me. So I didn't submit this year, but I've done one festival so far. Festival Applying to festivals is relatively new for me. I did Loons on the Lake in
Okay.
Minneapolis,
Okay.
and that was fun. I was like, let me definitely do it just because I've never done a festival before. And so it was good. The networking was good. That's the big thing is like the networking's all on you. And sometimes as
Mm-hmm.
comics, we tend to be introverts and be shy and nervous to talk to other comics, even though we're all here and we all love the same thing. Somehow that in and of itself isn't always the icebreaker. But it was cool, like as the lineup was getting announced, people would go online and be like, "Oh, hey, I saw you guys. You guys all followed me back on Instagram when I followed you, so like let's all chat and try to meet up and do whatever."
That's so nice.
And yeah, so meeting comics from like all different scenes and seeing how other parts of the country, like I hate to say it, I forget off the top of my head the guy's name and the two cities, but like Nebraska, for example, has two cities that are about an hour drive apart from each other, and like that is like the comedy scene in the state apparently is
Yeah.
just those two cities, and there's only maybe like one or two mics in each one, and comics will like, if they start in this one they'll hit those two, they'll drive the hour, hit the one or two other ones if they can hit both, and then they'll like drive the hour back. Like a lot of dedication in Nebraska. So
Dedicated.
right, but like even we were talking like, oh, we're so spread out. It's like, well, we're not Nebraska
Yeah.
where it's even more spread out, like you could do Phoenix to Tempe to Scottsdale in a night and it's not a big deal.
Yeah. There's
You
someone
know,
that's listening to us in a small town just hating us, being like, "Oh, you think that's spread out?"
yeah, it's like I do 3 hours to do one spot. Yeah. But it gives you that perspective of how different scenes are. So that was really cool doing the festival. Um so yeah, I liked that festival. I would do it again.
Okay.
I'm already booked this year for it. Otherwise, I would do it.
Oh, okay.
Um, like yeah, for that weekend, so I can't go back out to Minneapolis. It's also Minneapolis in June, so the weather's perfect. So if you like traveling like I do, it's the perfect time of year to visit.
Yeah.
Um, but like the industry panel was good. I got a lot of good information out of that. Like that's the thing is, I've heard a lot of times like when comics, and it's more so when you do like weekends at theaters or clubs or whatever, they kind of just hole up in the hotel room, and
Yeah.
you just order takeout and you just kind of chill and you're like, all right, 6 o'clock, I should start driving to the comedy club or whatever. But if you ever go to a festival, like to everyone listening, like yeah, go do the panels, go do whatever. Like when I was at like Big Pine, I think last year, I came in and I got there early and they were like doing trivia. Like all the performers on the festival were just playing
Mm,
like a in-house game of trivia. Like
yeah.
it was pretty fun, like it's a fun little icebreaker to break up into teams and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's like so nice. And it's like it is hard. Like you said, it is hard where it's like you do a festival or you go to a festival and it's like you need to like be a little more out and yeah, and like push
Mhm.
yourself to go do a thing and like yeah, the last festival that I did, I was purposely like in the Facebook group just being like I hated it. I felt cringy doing it, but I was
Mhm.
like I'm going to get coffee if anyone is gonna wants coffee. I'm going to this
Yeah.
dinner place, and I was just constantly throwing out like, hey, if anyone is looking, and like it did work. Like I met comics
Yeah.
through that and had dinner and like got coffee and did all the things. But like that is not me on the day to day.
Mhm.
And you're totally right. Like when I do the road, I'm literally like on stage thinking about like okay, I gotta get back to the hotel and I gotta like eat and just and watch TV and fall asleep. Like I can't wait to just go be in the hotel. Like so
Right.
yeah, it's definitely different to do that. But so you said applying to festivals is like a newer thing for you. Uh
Yeah.
what changed? I guess like what changed where you're like I'm not gonna do it to now you're doing it.
Yeah. Well, so it's newer in terms of like since I've moved out here, I've been more like, oh, what's that festival about? Where in the
Mm,
country is that? Or, like JFL's in Canada, for example, right? Like what are the other Canadian festivals? What are all the,
yeah.
what can I feasibly get to? Um and so when I started in New Jersey, I was still in college, so that, kind of limits how and when I can travel. I was also I by because I know my parents are listening to this, not so much they're doing, but I kind of sheltered myself a lot, I feel.
Yeah.
And I was, very much like I'm not gonna go out and adventure too much. I'm gonna be in here with my PlayStation. Um, so now that I'm out here, I was like, no, let me yeah, let's try seeing, different parts of the country, festivals, meet different comics, try to network with managers, agents, bookers, just everyone, just cast a wide net and see what happens. So, like doing the festival in Minneapolis now, like if I want to go do, 3 shows in Montana, I know who to call.
Yeah.
I met, just for example, right? Like I've heard Montana's beautiful. I have an actor friend who just went out there for like a film festival. He's like, dude, you got to go to
It's
like Big
beautiful.
Sky's amazing. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm like, all right, maybe take him up on that at some point. Or, I had only known 1 or 2 comics from Las Vegas. Now I know like 5 from that festival.
Yeah.
So, different, you just network and just meet different people from different parts of the country. So, when you start working the road, if you need recommendations for whether it's the nice part of town to stay or venue leads if you're self-producing, or
Yeah.
maybe they're buddy buddy with the booker of that comedy club, and at least if you're passing through town, get you a guest spot so you can at least kind of audition there and then come back later for work, or
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
just get
Exactly.
exposure.
Yeah, it's like it's so interesting because it's like it's so weird to think that networking is so important to comedy, but it is. And it's like anything that I've gotten in my career has because of like most likely it's been another comic. Like another comic
Hmm.
helped me out in some way or worked together or whatever it is. And it's like Zen Comedy is just all of his comics met together, So it's like that's how
Yeah.
it happened. And so it's like uh, yeah, it's like networking and I just did that. I just reached out to like someone that I met years ago just to figure out like in their town, what's the Facebook group to post in about coming to their town. It's like
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
simple like just the nicest little advice that could help you really, you know, figure stuff out on the road. It's crazy.
Yeah. Or even just to kind of like what we were talking about of like, oh, meet up and get coffee when you were in that one festival. Like I like traveling, but I don't like sightseeing by myself.
Mm,
Like I want to like when I got like when I was on my break from comedy and I had money to go vacation or do something. I have a bunch of friends who were film majors and moved to Los Angeles after college. So like, let me go visit them for a week, and I had some other performer friends who were out there. I was like, let me go take a week and just go through LA. And so most of the time I was hanging out with somebody, but then I went to the Griffith Observatory
yeah.
that's out in LA. And that was kind of like downtime, like between staying at 2 different friends' houses. So, and it was like a weekday, so everybody's at work. So I was kind of like walking around there by myself, and it was cool. I had a good time, but I always like having that thing of like checking something out with someone.
Yeah.
So, I was like, oh, it's kind of like a bummer. Like, I don't have anyone to like talk about how cool this thing is with right now. Cause again, as the little introvert, I'm like, I'm not just gonna go talk to a stranger you
Yeah.
know. But to that point, when I was in Minneapolis and part of the group chat, somebody was like, "Hey, I was thinking about checking out the Mall of America. Who's down for that?" And I was like, "Oh, me!" And it was a guy who was happened to be staying at the same hotel. He's like, "All right, I'll be there in like 3 hours. Let me just get in and shower, and then I'll drive us like whatever." And then we got to bum around like the Mall of America for a couple hours before our show that night. So
Yeah. And that's like
I
what I
know I
love.
enjoyed it so much more just because I had someone to hang out and point stuff out to.
Dude, totally. Like, and that's like what I love about the road too, is like you it's like a traveling vacation, right? Where you're just like
Hmm.
you're like on the road. Like I just did that with a comic here, Ian, that I met. He's
Yeah, yeah,
a
you were telling me.
Seattle comic. And then we went
Hmm.
to Oregon and we went to Goodwill, we went to thrift stores, we went to a video game place, we went to a bunch of different coffee shops. And I'm like, this is a vacation. This is like everything that I want to do with my free time. So
Yeah,
it's like, and he
that's the
was having a
dream.
great time, and we like stayed in a nice hotel, and it's like, and then we also got to do comedy, but it's like hours of
Yeah.
just hanging out. It's like, yeah, it's the best. So for sure. Yeah, is there thank you so much, Patrick, for doing this. I appreciate
Oh,
you
thank you,
for
buddy.
being on the podcast. And
Oh,
I
anytime.
always love talking comedy with you, for sure.
Yes. Same. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like we were saying, we
Where
can.
can people find you online?
So you can find me on all the social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at Patrick Bean Comedy. And then there's also, and I keep those up to date with show dates and everything like that. But you can also go to patrickbeancomedy.com. That also lists my shows and and just where I'll be and what I'm working on.
That's great, man. Yeah, definitely. I'll put all that in the show notes so you can definitely find it
Perfect. Thank you.
below. And yeah, man, again, thank you for doing this. And it's been cool to like, we met a few years ago and it's just cool to see like
Hmm.
the growth you've had in Arizona. And every time I visit, I love to just grab lunch and hang out with you and chat comedy. So glad we got to do it virtually too. But
Yeah, same. Thank you, man. And it's been very cool also hanging back here and seeing you work the road. And
ugh,
you spent some time in New York, spent some time in Seattle, and you're doing the thing, right? Like I yeah, but like you are showing like, hey, this is the DIY route and it can work. It can be successful. It can be sustainable. Like this is what we're doing. So, it's very cool to see that as well. Like,
good. Thank
from
you so
humble
much.
beginnings, friend. Like you saw whatever the open mic was we met. I think it was at the Old Bridge, and you had a joke about a Space Jam T-shirt, and I was like, "That's a great joke," and we were nerding out about it in the hallway. And now here we are, friends, a number of years later.
I don't remember that joke. So if you could tell me that joke, I'd love to write it back down.
I don't see. Here's the thing. It's the only time I heard you say it. I just remember we were talking about it, and I was like, "That is a great joke." And you were like, "I'm not sure about the premise." Like you could. It was like the first time you're doing it, and you had just walked off stage, and like we had met the week or two prior, but this was like the first real comedy conversation we started having, and I was like, "That is a great joke. There is something there. Even if you're not happy with the final form, like don't lose it."